Hello everyone, this is Sunny and I'm coming to you with You'll Learn to Love Me, a Yandere Masky X Reader by FluffyWubs. Today we're going to be starting off with Chapter 51. Room for one, please. I slam a $50 bill onto the counter, and to my surprise, it wasn't as hard to find the motel as I thought it would be. I was expecting to have gotten the wrong directions from the teen and end up getting lost, and guess it's my lucky day. The man behind the counter, who was reading an old-looking, torn-up newspaper, slid a key across the counter for me to grab. I uttered out a thank you before grabbing the keys and heading through the hall with multiple doors. I looked down to the single key I got with a small charm attached to it with an engraved number, room 102. I look at the doors as I pass by, 90, 92, and so on. I pick up my pace to make my way quicker towards my room, and once I finally reach door 102, I stick my key into the lock and unlock the door, pushing the door open with my foot. I remove the key from the lock and make my way inside. The room itself is dark and has a rather unnerving feeling to it. It's oddly cold inside. I feel a slight breeze brush past me, making a shiver run through my spine. I quickly use my hand as guidance by pressing my palm against the wall, trying to find a light switch. And once I feel something similar to a light switch brush along my fingertips, I flick it up. The light bulb that dangled from the ceiling weakly lit up the room and gave some sort of soft yellow glow to it. I sigh, shutting the door behind me before placing the food I had on the desk that sat against a wall. I take a moment and inspect the room. A king-size bed with 2 nightstands on each side. One of the nightstands had a small lamp sitting on top of it. And across the bed was an old-school TV, you know, the ones with a large back and a square screen, sitting on top of a drawer of some sorts. Well, it's better than nothing. I sit on the edge of the bed, allowing myself to fall back onto it. My eyes stare up at the ceiling, taking note of how many stains were on there. How do stains even get on the ceiling? Maybe it's just mold. Hell if I know. I shudder, rubbing my eyes. How did I even end up here? Never in my life had I seen this coming. And from a pretty good apartment to a 2-star motel. I could have never guessed. A tired yawn surpasses my lips as I flutter my eyes closed. I've got so much on my mind. I really need a good night's sleep to numb those thoughts out. Hoodie placed his hand on the handle of the door, only to be taken by surprise, and the door seemed to be already open. It's unlocked. Hoodie's voice is filled with surprise, yet a bit of confusion and suspicion. Something isn't right. Maybe she isn't here, Toby assumed with a shrug of his shoulders. The frowning masked man pushed the door open and allowed himself entrance. He cautiously walked inside the small apartment, peering around every corner. He checked the open kitchen. No one. The living room. Absolutely nothing. The bedroom, however. She was here. Hoodie gestured to the female's messy bed. Her covers were sprawled across the floor. Toby walked behind his hooded friend, peeking over his shoulder to get a look inside the room. Huh? Toby hummed. She's not here now. We're wasting time. Toby grunted, rolling his eyes and backing away. Hoodie snorted, turning his back towards the room. He clicked his tongue, shaking his head to himself before following his partner to the exit. Yet, before he placed his foot out the door, he heard something out of the ordinary. Hoodie froze, glancing over his shoulder. Toby noticed his partner trailing behind, and he paused and turned back around to the hooded male and cocked his head. Hoodie briefly looked back to the team, placing a single finger in front of his lips, or rather stitched frown, before he carefully tiptoeing back into the apartment. He heard something. His ears never deceive him. And Toby followed close by, still unsure of what Hoodie might have heard. Hoodie paused his steps in the middle of the living room to take another quick listen. Someone, or something, is in here. He made sure each step he took was soft as he made his way back into the female's bedroom. He paused at the entrance of her room again, making sure to take in everything around him. Bed, closet, desk, everything a bedroom usually has. Yet no person or any other entity in sight. Maybe his ears did deceive him. No, of course not. He's never wrong. He narrowed his eyes, scanning the room thoroughly once more. He held up his hand high enough for his partner behind him to see and beckoned him to come closer. Toby curiously followed Hoodie's command and entered the room almost silently, if it weren't for his hatchet dangling from his belt. Hoodie pointed at the bed, gesturing Toby to check underneath it, and Toby internally groaned. Typically Hoodie again, thinking he has some kind of sixth sense. The twitchy teen bent down to his knees and laid down on the ground looking underneath the bed. Empty, as expected. Toby stood back up and shook his head as a way of dismissing the fact that something was underneath there, and Hoodie's lips pursed into a thin line underneath his mask. He made sure to stay as stiff as a board, keeping his guard up to listen to any little peep in the room. He shifted his gaze towards the tightly shut closet and narrowed his eyes. He took a little baby steps towards the closet before pressing his ear against it, breathing soft, almost inaudible breathing. Hoodie sucked in a sharp breath before taking a few steps away from the closet. 1, 2, 3. Hoodie pulled the closet doors open immediately, shot his arm out at the person hiding inside it. He managed to get a grip on the fabric of their shirt and pulled them out of the closet, forcing them onto the ground. Ah, shit. The person let out a soft grunt as their chest was forced onto the floor and one of their arms twisted behind their back. Hoodie pinned the surprisingly tall male down before analyzing whoever was beneath him. Where's Masky? Hoodie snared lowly. He recognized the tall male to be Lou, the one who was supposed to look after Masky. I don't know, Lou admitted, wincing at the pressure that was being put out on his arm. Hoodie narrowed his eyes and had a look of disgust plastered on his face that was covered by his frowning mask. Bullshit, where is he? Hoodie's voice got progressively more threatening and lower. I said I don't know, get off. Lou barked at the hooded male, trying to wriggle his way out of his grip. He hasn't gotten in any actual fights for years, and he wasn't planning on getting in one now. Hoodie scoffed, moving his free hand behind his back to grab something while he turned to his partner. Toby, Hoodie called out to his partner, making the teen jump at the sudden mentioning of his name. Hoodie nodded his head towards the living room. Search every little bit of this apartment. I'll take care of him, Hoodie stated, pulling a small Glock from behind his back. Hey, wait, what are you going to do? Toby tried questioning Hoodie's actions, only to quickly shut his mouth when Hoodie spat under the command. I said go. Toby simply nodded, leaving the bedroom and proceeding to do what he was told. Hoodie was the second most superior person out of the three proxies. Toby might as well listen to him. Lou's breath got caught in his throat when he felt the familiar feeling of the barrel of a gun being pressed against the back of his head. His body tensed as the shivers ran along his body. Not again, not again. You wouldn't shoot your own people, would you? Lou's voice slightly wavered. Hoodie released a forced, sarcastic-sounding laugh. I'd suggest telling you where Masky is, unless you want to test that theory. The bitterness in his voice could be heard clearly. Lou swallowed thickly, either fight or flight, and he sure as hell won't fight. I genuinely don't know where Masky is. Lou's voice sounded calm and collected, yet his body language gave away the contrary. His muscles remained flexed and tense, similar to a person in a state of panic. Hoodie let out an unconvinced hum. Maybe he could break Lou's arm to get him to speak. Yeah, that'll work. Hoodie gripped Lou's arm firmer than before. Just before he was about to make an abrupt movement to snap it out of place, he had suddenly heard an unnatural thud outside of the bedroom. Toby? He called out. He received an unexpected response, one he wasn't exactly waiting for. Hell, it wasn't even considered an actual response. All he heard was a grunt of a struggle before it went quiet. Hoodie kept his guard up, waiting for an actual response from his partner, and nothing. Toby, he called out a bit louder, frustration bubbling within his stomach. He just wanted to get this over with already. Lou inhaled sharply before twisting his body around enough to snatch the firearm from Hoodie's hand. Lou threw the gun over his shoulder out of the bedroom as he used his legs to stomp Hoodie in the abdomen. Lou wriggled himself free from Hoodie's grasp and crawled his way into the living room. He noticed familiar chestnut hair on the floor, just slightly sticking out of the kitchen's entrance. What in the... Lou yelped as he suddenly felt a fist collide with his jaw, throwing his face to the side. Lou hissed in pain as he immediately threw his arms in front of his face to protect himself. Don't fight back. You know what happens if you fight back. Tell me where the fuck he is. Hoodie cranked his arm back, ready to slam it into Lou's face again, until a voice interrupted him. Hoodie? The familiar tone of voice caught the hooded man's attention, making him lift his head up to meet with the owner of the voice. His gaze got caught up with a familiar pair of brown orbs hidden beneath the dark holes of a white mask. He didn't even notice the danger he was in, until he realized the barrel of his own gun was being pointed straight at his head by his own partner. Hoodie immediately backed off of Lou and stitched his brows together. His own trusted friend and partner in crime was practically threatening him to end his life. Step back. Masky's voice had no emotion in it, just a dull, unnervingly quiet voice that sounded like it didn't even belong to Masky. What are you going to do? Hoodie hissed. Huh? Shoot me? You're going to shoot your partner. Hoodie speaks through clenched teeth. Even if he tried not to show it, it was visible that he was afraid. He sat on his knees, hands on his thighs, as he stared directly at the barrel of the Glock that Masky had gripped tightly in his hand. Yes, Masky simply responded. If that's what it takes for you to get out of my way, I will. Masky's voice was slightly muffled by his feminine mask. His finger twitched on the trigger, anticipating on whether to end his partner's life or not. Hoodie let out a short, simple hum. He stuffed his gloved hand in his pocket, taking out the medicine-filled bottle he took with him, and he held it up and slightly rattled it, allowing Masky to get a clear view of it. Hoodie knew Masky needed these, more than ever. He was addicted to these. We'll make a trade, Hoodie offered, holding the bottle between his thumb and index. This, he slightly lifted up the small bottle. For that. He nodded his head towards the gun pointed at him. Masky scoffed. He wasn't going to give in. Hoodie glanced around as Masky debated his offer, and Hoodie tried catching a glimpse of Toby, and managed to do so by slightly leaning forward to peek inside the kitchen. He found Toby flat on the floor, a knife stuck in his lower back. He was still breathing, just not moving. Toby? Hoodie called out again. Toby slightly stirred, only lifting his head up ever so slightly to make eye contact. He grunted. I can't fucking move. Toby seethed. Masky turned his head to look at Toby and snorted. I forgot you were alive. He rolled his eyes. Toby scoffed. I can feel the blade scraping against my fucking spine, Toby uttered out. He had no pain at all, just the pressure of the knife being stuck in his back. If he moved too much, he could probably end up damaging his spinal cord. Masky returned his attention back to the hooded male. He wasn't going to hand him the gun. That would be utterly stupid. There's only one way, and one way only. Masky pulled the trigger back. A bullet flew out of the barrel of the gun and hitting Hoodie straight in the chest. His breath collapsed as he dropped the bottle of pills onto the floor, shooting his hands up to his wound. Holy shit, Masky, you... Lou was starting to panic until Masky simply glared his way. Shut it, he retorted sharply. Masky walked over to Hoodie and grabbed the bottle of pills off the ground, stuffing them in his pocket. He has enough time to take them later on. The masked man planted the sole of his boot on Hoodie's chest, pushing him down to the ground. Stay out of my way, he simply threatened with such simple words before turning to Lou. Masky nodded his head towards the door, implying that Lou should follow him out. Let's go. Did I sleep? Well, kind of. I slept an hour, maybe, until the sound resembling some kind of demolishing came from the room next to mine. The ruckus just wouldn't stop. I might as well tell them to shut up. People are trying to sleep, and it's pretty much the middle of the night. At least I assume so. It's dark outside. That's a start. I grumbled to myself as I get up from my bed, snatching the keys from the desk before heading out of my room. I step out of my room, shutting the door behind me before turning the direction the noise is coming from. The first thing I see is a rather young adult of color, probably around my age. He was leaning against the wall right next to the door where a muffled yelling and loud crashes were heard. He seemed to notice my presence since he looked my way before I even spoke up. I'm sorry, he apologized firmly. My friends are having a scene in there. I can't really stop them, he stated. I meet his gaze only to look into his unique-looking orbs. His left iris was a soft forest green color, while his right iris held the bright color of blue ocean. Oh, I stammered. I wasn't expecting such a straightforward apology. He seemed to be in quite a mess, too. Do you need any help? He looked like a kind person, even more when he gave me a small, genuine smile. I appreciate your offer, he replies, but I'm better off just waiting for them to cool off, he states. Well, if it's that bad, I wouldn't want to get involved either. Well, if you need anything, I'm always available. I'm YN. I introduced myself to the seemingly kind male who smiled at my offer. Marcus, he replied shortly after. Well, Marcus, you know where to find me. I give him a kind smile back. Yeah, thanks, he responds. I make my way back to my room, pushing the door open before shutting it behind me. Well, the sounds should die soon, at least I hope so. That is the end of that chapter. The chapter after that one is chapter 52. Let me know how you guys feel about that, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.